Have you ever felt the urge to tell someone every time something happens in your life? A habit that seems harmless, sharing a small victory, a passing sadness, or a plan still taking shape can be the very thing that keeps you from truly moving forward. In a world where every movement can become content, where every little change can be a caption, we often forget. One of the greatest powers of a human being is the ability to remain silent and keep something to themselves. Stoicism doesn't teach you to shut your heart. It teaches you something simple, yet powerful. Live a life that needs no justification. When you stop explaining, you start acting. When you no longer crave recognition, you begin to change for real. And in this video, we'll walk through 13 Stoic lessons to help you stop talking about your life and start living it. 1. Speak less. See yourself more clearly. There's a strange paradox. The more we talk, the more we lose ourselves. While speech is a tool for connection, its overuse pulls us away from our inner world. Isabel was a clear example. She shared everything from personal conflicts and work frustrations to raw emotions she barely understood before speaking them aloud. She believed speaking out was a form of healing, a way to release tension. But what she didn't realize was that every word she poured out kept her trapped in the same loop of suffering. The more she talked about her pain, the deeper she sank into the role of the victim, reinforcing the image of someone helpless and stuck. Then, one day, Isabel stopped. No more heavy posts on social media. No more rushed replies or spontaneous meetups. The silence felt foreign at first, even frightening, but then she discovered something she had never experienced before: space to hear herself. Without the need to speak to anyone, she began to feel her pain shifting not through explanation, but through presence. She sat with her emotions instead of analyzing them. She felt them instead of interpreting them. And for the first time in years, she no longer saw herself as a person who is hurting. She was simply a person, alive. This is what Stoicism pointed out more than 2,000 years ago. When you stop constantly defining yourself through words, you begin to understand who you are without having to explain it to anyone. Speaking less is not withdrawal, but a form of deliberate stillness, a place where you begin to see your true nature, not through the reactions of others, but through honest attention to your own emotions. In that silence, everything becomes more real. You are no longer the story you tell, you become a living witness to your own journey. And that is when you truly begin to live not through speaking, but through awareness. 2. Every word you say lays a brick in who you become. We often think of speech as a tool for communication, for venting, or simply filling the silence in casual conversations. But the truth is, every word you utter, even in jest or offhand, gradually shapes how others see you, and more critically, how you see yourself. A phrase like, "I'm not good at this," may sound harmless, but repeated enough times, it stops being a comment and becomes an identity. In that sense, words don't just describe who you are, they quietly construct you, brick by brick, like the walls of a home you end up living in. What's dangerous is that most words come from the unconscious, a series of automatic responses hardwired by past experiences, failures, pain, or judgment. You say, "I always mess things up," not because you're truly incompetent, but because you've gotten used to blaming yourself so often that the phrase has become a reflex. You say, "I just don't fit in," not because you lack worth, but because you've heard it so long from others or yourself that it now feels inseparable from your identity. Each repetition places another brick on the wall that limits who you believe you can be. The Stoics understood that language shapes reality. To them, speech wasn't for filling silence, it was for reminding oneself of the kind of person one aims to become. Epictetus once said, "If someone criticizes you and it's true, change. If it's false, smile. But if it's you who criticizes yourself, then it's no longer objective. It's quiet and relentless self-destruction." Modern science confirms this. People who use constructive language to describe themselves tend to have greater resilience and clarity of thought. Not because they're blindly optimistic, but because they consciously choose to define themselves in a direction worth growing toward. Instead of saying, "I'm terrible at this," they say, "I'm learning to get better." That phrase too is a brick, but one that builds, not confines. You don't need to become someone who always speaks in perfect, polished affirmations. But you do need to understand that your words are never meaningless. They can be passing noise or subtle reminders of the person you are building each day. And once you become aware of this, you stop being a victim of language and start becoming the architect of your life, choosing which words to hold on to and which to let go. 3. True transformation needs no audience. In an age where every moment can be turned into a post, a story, or a status update, we've forgotten how to live without an audience. Every time you start a new habit, you feel the urge to share it. Your first day at the gym, you snap a photo of the treadmill. Wake up early once, you post a picture of coffee and a book whose pages you haven't read. You don't do it to show off, but somewhere deep down, you believe that change only matters if someone knows about it. But from that belief, your transformation starts to depend on the eyes of others, and it loses its original power. The Stoics thought differently. They didn't seek recognition. For them, change was a private matter between you and yourself, a silent contract, needing no validation, no applause. Marcus Aurelius, in his writings, didn't write to publish or preach. He wrote to remind himself of discipline, virtue, and self-mastery. And because no one else was meant to read it, every word he wrote was raw, honest, and powerful, so much so that we're still reading it over 2 millennia later. Real change needs no audience. It needs discipline, quiet repetition, and an inner strength that doesn't collapse when no one is watching. You may be entering a new chapter of life, cutting off bad habits, learning patience, building discipline, healing old wounds, and you'll feel the urge to share. To hear someone say, "You're doing great." But when you share too early, that validation can create a false sense of completion. The brain feels rewarded before the process takes root. You slow down. You stop halfway because you got what you thought you needed: attention. But you miss what you truly needed: transformation. Try doing the opposite. Live as if no one is watching. Change quietly, bit by bit, not for anyone, but for yourself. And one day, others may notice something different about you. But by then, you won't need their praise, because you'll know the change has already happened, and what made it real wasn't their gaze, but your own honest effort. 4. Let your actions speak for you. Have you ever met someone who said they would change, work harder, start over, but weeks later, nothing had changed? Maybe you've been that person too. Voicing a new intention can sometimes feel like part of the job is already done, as if saying it out loud proves the change is near. But reality says otherwise. Words don't build results. Words don't wake you up early, don't pull you out of your comfort zone, don't keep you disciplined every day. Only action can do that. The Stoics understood well the gap between promise and practice. They didn't judge a man by what he claimed he would do, but by what he actually did, especially when no one was watching. Marcus Aurelius didn't need to write that he was a good emperor. He let his actions prove it. Epictetus didn't boast about rising above the hardship of slavery. He lived a life of devotion, simplicity, and reason, and that alone made him a model. They knew real power lies in the quiet repetition of right action, not in grand declarations. We live in a time where it's easier to talk than to act. Anyone can post goals, announce plans, or write an inspiring caption, but waking up early without reminders, staying focused without deadlines, refusing a bad habit when no one's checking in, that's what makes a difference. Action doesn't need an audience to be meaningful. On the contrary, the fewer people know about it, the more it reveals your integrity and resolve. Take a closer look at what you're saying to others and ask yourself, am I speaking to clarify a commitment or just to be acknowledged? If it's the latter, stop, turn inward, and begin. The way you slowly reshape your habits, the way you learn each day, the way you choose silence to focus on what matters. Those are the loudest statements of who you're becoming. You don't need to explain. You don't need anyone to understand. When you act consistently, others will notice. And even if no one does, you'll know you're on the right path. And for someone living by Stoic principles, that's enough. 5. Don't share, just to be comforted. There's a kind of sharing that doesn't come from a true desire to connect, but simply from a need to be comforted, affirmed, or soothed. It might seem harmless after all. Who doesn't want to be heard and understood? But if you don't realize you're sharing just to ease an emotion, you risk falling into an illusion. You tell, someone comforts you, you feel better for a moment, then days later, you tell another sad story to feel that same relief. The problem is, you're not actually healing anything. You're just delaying the pain with temporary words. The Stoics understood the difference between sharing to understand yourself and sharing for easy sympathy. The first requires courage and self-awareness. The second often leads to emotional dependence. When you share something painful but don't truly want to change, you're using others as emotional cushions, and when no one's there to lean on, you collapse. Worse, if you share with someone who lacks empathy or good intent, you risk being judged, hurt further, or having your words used against you later on. You've likely experienced this. You open up about something personal, and the other person doesn't really listen, or worse, responds with, "I've been through worse." Instead of relief, you feel betrayed. That's not connection, that's an energy drain. Stoicism doesn't tell you to stay silent forever, but it urges discernment. Share only when you truly need help or when the relationship is strong enough to hold you, not just to fill an emotional gap. Before saying something private, ask yourself, am I sharing to be helped or just to feel less alone? If it's the latter, try writing it down instead of speaking, or simply sit with the feeling a bit longer. Your emotions don't need to be validated by others to be real. And sometimes, what you need most isn't a hug or advice, but the courage to take responsibility for your own sadness. When you can stay with your feelings without needing pity, that's when you begin to grow silently strong. And that quiet strength is where inner freedom begins. 6. When you stop telling the story, you stop reliving the pain. Every time you retell something that once hurt you, you're not just remembering the event, you're reviving the emotions that came with it. The anger comes back. The sadness resurfaces. The feeling of betrayal, abandonment, rejection, they all return as if they never left. At first, you believe revisiting the past is part of healing, a way to process unresolved emotions. But what you don't realize is that each retelling isn't just remembering, it's reenacting. And if done often enough, that reenactment fuses the pain into your identity. Stoicism doesn't object to remembering the past, but it emphasizes this: only look back if it helps you move forward. Otherwise, let it rest. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can choose not to be harmed, and if you choose that, then you haven't been. That's not denial. It's a reminder that you can stop hurting yourself by endlessly repeating the old story with its old roles. You can release it not by forgetting, but by no longer replaying it in your words, thoughts, and behaviors. The more you talk about a wound, the longer it takes to heal. Like a cut on your skin, if you keep picking at it, it never gets the chance to close properly. The mind works the same way. Each retelling pulls you back to the past, to the version of you that was the victim, the one who was broken, the one who needed sympathy. And if you're not careful, you become the one keeping the pain alive, not anyone else. So instead of retelling, try feeling. Let your emotions flow like a river. Don't freeze them into words. Observe your pain like you'd watch clouds. Let it come, let it go, without needing to hold on. When you learn to remain silent about what once broke you, not because you're avoiding it, but because you refuse to let it define you again, that's when true healing begins. Your wound is part of your path, not the essence of who you are. When you stop telling the story, you begin to live as someone who is recovering, not someone still stuck in the past. And sometimes that's the first step back to the wholeness you thought you lost. 7. What you do in silence is what truly defines you. There's a truth you only discover after trying to change in silence. What you do when no one is watching, no one reminding you, no one clapping for you, that is what most clearly reveals who you are becoming. Because when there are no eyes on you, no pressure to perform, no audience to impress, you're left with the essential question, who am I doing this for? And if the answer is for myself, then that is real transformation. Many people begin a new journey full of excitement and announcements. They share their goals, lay out their plans, and document each step of change on social media. But that excitement quickly fades when the likes stop coming, when no one asks how it's going, when no one seems impressed. That's when motivation collapses in the absence of an audience. The Stoics were different. They didn't act to be noticed. They didn't seek recognition. They simply did what was right, day after day, in silence, because they understood that character is not born under the spotlight, but through discipline repeated in the dark. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And that's how you affirm who you are. You don't need to say, "I'm learning to be more composed." Show it in how you respond to insult. You don't need to declare, "I'm changing." Let others see it in your patience, in your listening, in the calm where you carry yourself that wasn't there before. These quiet acts without a soundtrack, without a spotlight, are where your character is forged. And you'll notice something unexpected. The more you do in silence, the less you feel the need to explain. Because real change shows in your eyes, your energy, your presence. Others will sense it without you having to say a word, and even if no one notices, it doesn't lessen your worth. Because you're no longer living to be seen, you're living to be true. 8. Privacy is not avoidance, it's strength. Living privately doesn't mean you're hiding from the world, nor is it a sign of weakness or isolation. On the contrary, it's a quiet but enduring strength, a conscious choice to keep something for yourself in an age where people showcase everything, even their sadness or their breakfast. When you choose privacy, you're not saying, "I have nothing to share." You're saying, "I don't need to share in order to matter." That's confidence without the spotlight. The Stoics understood that the more valuable something is, the more it needs protection. A seed that hasn't sprouted shouldn't be exposed to storms. A gold still forming shouldn't be tossed out for judgment, praise, or critique. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That wasn't just about peace, it was a reminder. If you let the outside world invade every corner of your mind, you lose the one place you can truly govern yourself. Privacy is where you can make mistakes, experiment, and fail without having to explain yourself. It gives you the space to adjust, to pause, to begin again without anyone keeping score. It's where you hear your truest inner voice, unfiltered by expectations, eyes, or applause. And when you cultivate yourself in that silent space, you don't just grow stronger, you become unshakable. A private person isn't someone with nothing to say. They're someone who doesn't feel the need to say everything. They choose what to share, like a craftsman selecting each line to carve in stone. They don't rush to show the painting before it's finished. They don't swing open the doors of their life for anyone to walk through, only to trade their peace for a moment of validation. 9. When you're silent, you make others listen. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, the one who remains silent becomes a still point that draws attention. Silence doesn't make you invisible. It makes your presence more distinct. People begin to wonder, what's he thinking? Why isn't she speaking? What makes them so calm? It's in the absence of noise that you spark real presence. When you stop fighting for airtime, your words, when they finally come, carry weight. Silence isn't passive. It's not surrender. It's a deliberate choice to observe rather than react, to listen rather than interrupt, to understand before asserting. The Stoics didn't teach silence out of fear, but out of discipline. Epictetus said, "Nature gave us one mouth and 2 ears, so we might listen twice as much as we speak." That's a ratio worth pondering. Because every time you choose silence, you not only increase your understanding, you spare yourself from saying what doesn't need to be said. You've likely met someone like that. They don't speak much, but when they do, the room goes quiet. Not because they shout, not because they perform, but because everyone knows if they chose to speak, it's worth hearing. Silence builds credibility quietly. Every time you walk away from pointless arguments, every time you don't react to provocation, you send a powerful message. I'm in control of myself. And that makes people listen not with their ears, but with respect. People often think you need to talk a lot to be heard, to dominate the space, to interrupt, to outvoice. But the opposite is true. People listen to those who choose their moment to speak. Your words don't need to be loud, just timely. And when you commit to that purposeful silence, you don't have to prove anything. Your calm will do the talking. Your presence will speak for you. And others, even if they don't know why, will pause to listen because you've spoken with something more powerful than words. Self-command. 10. Let time be the only proof. We often feel the need to prove ourselves to show others we've changed, matured, or accomplished something meaningful. And so we rush to speak, to explain, even to impress. But the Stoics chose a different path. They didn't argue to be acknowledged, didn't explain to be understood, and didn't chase praise. They let time speak. They knew that what truly holds value doesn't need to shout to be heard. Time is the most honest mirror, and everything eventually reveals itself in its light. You may say you've changed, but if your choices, habits, and reactions remain the same, no words can fix that. On the other hand, if you say nothing, make no announcements, seek no approval but show up daily, move with discipline, and commit quietly, then you are laying each stone of a new version of yourself in a way that's silent yet undeniable. And the beauty is, when you do the right thing long enough, the change will show on its own without introduction. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Time is like a river of passing events, and strong is its current. No sooner is a thing brought to sight than it is swept by and another takes its place. What he meant was this: don't concern yourself with momentary opinions or judgments, for all of it will pass. What remains are the things you do repeatedly, patiently, in silence. When you let time be the only proof, you force yourself to live with sincerity because you no longer rely on applause to keep going. You stop chasing achievements just to be seen. You do the work because it's right, because it strengthens something within you. The silence at first may cause others to doubt. They may ask what you're doing, why you're so quiet, or even assume you've given up. Don't respond. Don't correct them. Every explanation you offer only deepens your dependence on their perception. Just continue. Keep living right. Keep refining yourself. Keep repeating what matters quietly and persistently. And when enough time has passed, you won't need to say a word. Others will see you differently. The change will show in your eyes, in your calm, in your ability to stay centered amid life's turbulence. And if someone asks, "How did you change like that?" you can simply smile and say, "I didn't talk much about it. I let time do that part." 11. No one can fully understand you, and that's okay. One of the deepest sources of our exhaustion is the longing to be fully understood. We speak of our past hoping someone will empathize. We share our dreams hoping to be recognized. We explain our personal choices as if we need approval to carry on. But the truth is, there will always be those who don't understand you, don't relate, don't support you, and some won't even bother to listen. And the important thing is, that's okay. Misunderstanding is not failure, it's just part of life. The Stoics never tried to make everyone agree with them. They didn't see approval as a condition for existence. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." He didn't mean you should rebel against the world, but that you should have the courage to live truthfully even when the world doesn't get it. Because true understanding requires experience, depth, and sincere attention to things that cannot be forced, begged for, or assumed. You can speak endlessly about yourself and still feel alone. Because what you really want isn't just to be heard, but to be understood. And the hard truth is, very few people listen with their heart or with enough patience to set aside judgment. But the moment you stop needing to be understood by others, you unlock a new kind of freedom. Not everyone has to get you, and you don't need to be understood to live authentically. What matters is not how many people validate your journey, but whether you are living in alignment with what you know to be right. You may be growing, healing, quietly rebuilding a new version of yourself, and some people won't see it. They'll still relate to the old you, still treat you as if you haven't changed. Let them. Give them permission not to understand. Because the more you explain yourself, the more energy you steal from the path you're meant to walk. When you accept that no one can fully understand you, you also realize you don't need to be understood to have worth. You can live fully even if no one comprehends the depths inside you. And maybe that is the clearest sign of maturity. Calm in the face of others' limited vision, and unwavering loyalty to your own path. 12. Not everyone deserves to know the truth within you. We're often taught to be open, to be honest, to live true to our feelings, but what few people say is this: truth must be protected. Not everyone has the sensitivity to understand what you're going through, and even fewer have the kindness to honor what you share. When you speak of your deepest wounds, your unborn dreams, or fears you've never named, you're not just sharing information, you're handing someone a part of your soul. And not everyone knows how to hold that with care. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be closed off or paranoid, but it does emphasize one thing: observe carefully before opening up. Epictetus taught his students to let time reveal a person's character before offering trust. Don't confuse fleeting connection with readiness. Someone may listen today only to use your words against you tomorrow, whether intentionally or not. That's not their fault, it's because you shared too soon. Not all silence is a lack of sincerity. Sometimes it's how you protect what's growing inside you. Just like a seed must be buried in soil before it can sprout, your inner thoughts, emotions, and transformation need safe ground to take root. Sharing too soon with the wrong person may destroy what you're trying to preserve. That's not tragedy. It's a lesson. The truth within you is a treasure, and no one is entitled to it just because they're curious or seem friendly. Pay attention to how people talk about others when you're with them. If they easily judge, easily reveal private stories, they'll likely do the same with yours. Trust should not be given freely. It is a privilege that must be earned. When you learn to keep part of your life for yourself, you don't grow distant, you preserve your spiritual wholeness. You can still live kindly, with empathy and love, but that doesn't mean everyone has the right to enter your deepest space. Your truth should be shared only with those quiet enough to listen with their heart, mature enough not to judge, and trustworthy enough never to make you regret opening up. In that silence, you don't lose connection, you build a sanctuary for the deepest kind of freedom, to be yourself, without having to give all of yourself away to be accepted. 13. If you do it for yourself, you don't need to say it. Some of the most profound changes in life happen quietly, without announcements, without sharing, without the need for praise or recognition. Because when you truly do something for yourself, the urge to tell others disappears. No need to prove it. No need for witnesses, no need for applause to keep going. You do it because it's necessary. You do it because it's right, not because it's impressive. Many begin the journey of self-growth with a craving for recognition, hoping someone will notice their effort, their progress, their transformation. But if your reason for change is to be praised, that change will always be fragile, always dependent on external eyes. The moment that attention fades, so does your motivation. The Stoics teach the opposite, that lasting change starts from within and needs no validation to have value. Seneca once wrote, "The reward for a good deed is having done it." And that is a kind of freedom nothing can replace. Think back to the moments when you truly changed. Maybe you overcame a fear, gave up a bad habit, or committed to a more disciplined way of life. Those changes may have gone unnoticed by others, but you knew. And that feeling, knowing you're on the right path, even when no one sees, is the greatest reward. That's when you no longer feel the need to announce, to update, to prove. Silence becomes the clearest expression of your commitment to yourself. When you act from within, no one can take it from you. No rejection can shake you. No praise can own you. You don't live to be seen. You live to be alive. And that is enough. I used to be the kind of person who always wanted others to know what I was doing, how hard I was trying, how much I had changed, what I had overcome. At first, I thought it was a way to acknowledge my own effort, but over time, I realized. Every time I spoke about it, I was giving away a part of the quiet strength growing within me. Because when you need someone else's validation to keep going, you've handed over control of your motivation. The moment I began to keep more things to myself was also when I felt myself maturing. No longer rushing to explain, no longer needing to share every step, I started to feel at peace with who I was. And within that stillness, I did more deeper, truer, better. I believe that if you truly live for something meaningful, you won't need to talk much about it. If your life is lived rightly, It will tell the story for you. No noise needed. No need to prove anything. If what you just heard gave you something to reflect on, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. Stay silent when you must. Act when the time is right, and let your life be the clearest proof of the person you're becoming. No need for loud words, just live truthfully. That's enough. See you in the next video.